My husband made me sit at our dinner table while everyone else ate, said I didn't deserve food until I learned my place. What he didn't know? My mother was watching from across the room, and when she finally spoke, that man's whole world came crashing down around him. Hey everyone, before we get into this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you won't believe how this unfolds. Drop a comment if you've ever had to teach someone not to underestimate you. Now, let me take you back to the worst night of my marriage. My name is Gabrielle, and 3 years ago, I thought I'd found my forever. I was 25, working as a school counselor, and I met Derek at church on a regular Sunday morning. He was handsome, confident, and he had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. He worked in commercial real estate, always talking about his next big deal, his next opportunity. When he asked me out after service that day, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. We dated for a year before he proposed, and honestly, it felt like a fairy tale. He was attentive, romantic, always surprising me with little gestures. My mother Lorraine came up from down south for the wedding. She was quiet that day, watching everything with these careful eyes, but I thought she was just being protective. That's what mothers do, right? She'd visit once a year, stay for a week or two, and she always lived so simply. Small suitcase, modest clothes, never made a fuss about anything. Derek never paid her much attention, which bothered me, but I told myself not everyone is close with their in-laws. The first 6 months of marriage were beautiful. We had our little routines, our inside jokes, our dreams for the future. But then something shifted. Derek's business started picking up. He landed a few major clients, started making real money, and suddenly he was moving in different circles. Wealthier circles, the kind of people who summered in the Hamptons and talked about their third homes like it was nothing. And the more successful he became, the smaller he made me feel. It started with little comments. "Baby, maybe you should skip dessert tonight." Or, the wives of my clients, they really take care of themselves. Then it became about my job. A school counselor? When people ask what my wife does, I don't know what to say. I tried to brush it off. I told myself he was just stressed, that building a business was hard, that I needed to be more supportive. So I smiled through the criticism. I changed my hair when he didn't like it. I wore the dresses he preferred. I became smaller and smaller, hoping it would make him love me again. But it was never enough. Derek became obsessed with status. He started dropping names, bragging about who he knew, who he'd impressed. The man I married, the one who used to hold my hand during prayer, was disappearing. In his place was someone I barely recognized, someone who looked at me like I was an accessory that didn't quite match his new lifestyle. Then came the dinner party. Derek announced it on a Tuesday evening, barely looking up from his phone. "We're hosting a dinner party Saturday night. 8 people. I need everything perfect, Gabrielle. These clients are important." He handed me a list of demands that was 2 pages long. Specific wines, specific cuts of meat, specific flowers for the centerpiece. I had 3 days to pull off what felt like a wedding reception. I spent those 3 days cooking, cleaning, preparing. I wanted him to be proud of me. I wanted to prove that I could fit into his new world. I made herb-crusted lamb, roasted vegetables with balsamic glaze, a chocolate torte that took 4 hours. I set the table with our wedding china, arranged fresh flowers, dimmed the lights just right. When I looked at everything that Saturday evening, I actually felt proud. Maybe this would remind him of who we used to be. My mother was visiting that week, and Derek reluctantly agreed she could join us. He sat her at the far end of the table, away from his important guests. I should have seen that as the red flag it was, but I was too focused on making everything perfect. I wore a black dress that Derek had bought me, did my makeup, and when I looked in the mirror, I thought maybe tonight would be different. The guests arrived at 7, 4 couples, all dripping in wealth and designer labels. The women kissed the air beside my cheeks, and the men shook Derek's hand like they were sealing business deals. Everyone complimented the house, the food, the ambiance. I felt a flutter of hope in my chest. Maybe I'd done it. Maybe I'd finally measured up. Dinner was served, and I watched as everyone took their first bites. The compliments came immediately. "Gabrielle, this is incredible." Where did you learn to cook like this? Derek, you're a lucky man. I smiled, grateful, and moved toward my seat between Derek and one of the guests. That's when everything fell apart. Derek's hand shot out, stopping me. Gabrielle, wait in the kitchen. His voice was casual, like he was asking me to pass the salt. I froze, confused. I'm sorry, what? I thought maybe he needed something. Maybe I'd forgotten to bring out the wine. Maybe there was some hosting duty I'd overlooked. He looked up at me and there was something cold in his eyes, something cruel. You can eat after our guests leave. The entire table went silent. Forks stopped mid-air. Conversations died mid-sentence. I felt every pair of eyes turn toward me, and my face burned with humiliation. One of the women, a blonde in a cream-colored dress, let out a nervous laugh. Derek, that's a joke, right? But Derek wasn't laughing. He leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine glass, looking almost pleased with himself. My wife needs to learn her role, service first. That's how a household should run. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I stood there in my beautiful dress, in my own home, feeling like I was 6 inches tall. Another guest, an older man with gray temples, cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps that's a bit harsh. But Derek was on a roll now. He was performing. Honestly, she's gained weight lately. Missing one meal won't hurt her, might even do her some good. That's when I started crying. Not loud, dramatic sobs, just silent tears that slid down my cheeks and probably ruined my makeup. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the serving spoon. One of the women reached out like she wanted to comfort me, but Derek's glare stopped her. This is my house, my rules. If you have a problem with how I run my household, you're welcome to leave. Nobody left. They all just sat there, uncomfortable but complicit. And that might have hurt worse than Derek's words. I turned and walked toward the kitchen, my vision blurred with tears, my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Behind me, I heard someone try to change the subject, forcing a light conversation about the weather, about the stock market, about anything except what had just happened. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the counter, trying not to collapse. Through the doorway, I could hear them laughing. Actually laughing. Like nothing had happened. Like I wasn't in the next room falling apart. I looked down at the food I'd spent 3 days preparing, and I felt sick. How had I let it get this far? How had I become so small? Then I heard it. A chair scraping against the floor. Footsteps. And my mother's voice clear and cold as winter ice. Derek. Just his name. But something in the way she said it made the entire room go quiet. I stepped back toward the doorway, peeking through, and I saw her standing at the end of the table. She wasn't tall, my mother, but in that moment she looked like a giant. Derek tried to smile, but I could see his nervousness. Yes, ma'am. My mother never raised her voice. She didn't have to. Call your wife back in here, now. Derek glanced around at his guests, trying to maintain his authority. With all due respect, Mrs. Baptiste, this is between me and Gabrielle. My mother tilted her head slightly. There is no respect in this house. That much is clear. Get my daughter, now. Something in her tone made Derek stand up. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was fear. But he called my name, his voice uncertain now, and I walked back into that dining room on shaking legs. I stood in the doorway, tears still wet on my face, and I waited. My mother looked at each guest, one by one, letting the silence stretch. Does anyone here know who I am? Confused looks, shaking heads. One man offered, You're Gabrielle's mother? My mother smiled, but it wasn't warm. I'm Lorraine Baptiste, owner and CEO of Baptiste Hotels International. I watched the color drain from every face at that table. One of the women's forks clattered onto her plate. The older man who'd spoken up earlier actually stood up from his chair. The Lorraine Baptiste? The hotel empire? My mother nodded once. 47 properties across the country. We also own a significant commercial real estate portfolio, but I'm sure Derek already knew that. She turned to look at my husband, who looked like he might pass out. You did know that, didn't you, Derek? He couldn't speak. He just stood there, mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out. I was just as shocked as everyone else. My mother? A billionaire? The woman who visited in simple clothes, who never made a fuss, who I thought lived modestly down south? It felt like the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. My mother continued, her voice steady and calm. I built my company from nothing, started as a maid in a hotel when I was 17, saved every penny, learned every aspect of the business, bought my first property when I was 35. That was 40 years ago. She walked slowly around the table, and I noticed people actually leaned away from her. I never told my daughter about the money because I wanted her to live a normal life. I wanted her to find love that was real, not love that was bought. So I watched. I visited quietly. I observed who she chose. Her eyes landed on Derek. And I've been watching you, Derek. For 3 years, I've been watching how you treat my daughter. Derek finally found his voice. Mrs. Baptiste, I didn't know. I had no idea you were... She held up one hand, silencing him. You didn't need to know who I was to treat your wife with basic human dignity. But since we're here, let me tell you who else is in this room. She gestured to the man with gray temples. Mr. Holland, your development company rents space in 3 of my commercial buildings, doesn't it? Downtown properties? The man nodded slowly, his face pale. Yes, ma'am. My mother smiled. And Mrs. Chen, your husband's restaurant supply company, you have contracts with 22 of my hotels, correct? The woman in cream couldn't meet her eyes. Yes. One by one, my mother went around the table, revealing connection after connection. Derek's important clients were all, in some way, tied to her empire. They all depended on her goodwill, her contracts, her business. When she finished, the silence was deafening. My mother turned back to Derek. So, when my son-in-law starves my daughter in her own home, when he humiliates her in front of strangers, when he treats her like she's worthless, I take that very personally. She let that sink in. Now, Derek, don't speak to me. Speak to her. Apologize to your wife. Derek turned to me, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Pure panic. Gabrielle, baby, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I've been under so much stress. I wasn't myself. Please, you have to understand. But his words felt empty, hollow. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he got caught. He was sorry about the consequences. The guests started making excuses, sudden headaches, early meetings, sick babysitters. Within 5 minutes, the dining room was empty except for Derek, my mother, and me. The silence was crushing. Then Derek's phone started buzzing, text after text, email after email. He looked down at the screen, and I watched his face crumble. No, 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 no. What is it? I asked, my voice hoarse from crying. He looked up at me, then at my mother, and I saw actual tears in his eyes. They're canceling. All of them. Mr. Holland just terminated our lease agreements. The Chens pulled their investment. Marcus from the bank, he's calling in our business loan early. His hands were shaking. My entire business, everything I've built, it's all falling apart. My mother's voice was quiet. You wanted to watch your wife beg for food? Now you know how it feels to beg. Derek fell to his knees, actually fell to his knees on our dining room floor and started sobbing. Please, Mrs. Baptiste, please. I'll do anything. I'll change. I'll be better. Please don't do this. But my mother wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me. Gabrielle, baby, what do you want to do? I looked at this man on the floor, this man who'd promised to love and cherish me, who'd made me feel worthless for months, who'd humiliated me in my own home. And I felt nothing. No love, no pity, just exhaustion. I want to leave, I whispered. I want a divorce. Derek's head snapped up. No, Gabrielle, please, I love you. I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you, I promise. But I was done with his promises. My mother put her arm around me. I have lawyers, the best in the state. You'll be taken care of. We walked out of that house together that night, leaving Derek on the floor, surrounded by the ruins of the perfect dinner party. I didn't take anything except my purse and my dignity. The divorce took 4 months. Derek tried everything, promising to change, sending flowers, showing up at my mother's property where I was staying. But I never wavered. I finally saw him clearly. He didn't love me. He loved the idea of control. He loved having someone beneath him. And I refused to be that person anymore. H. His business collapsed. Not completely, but enough. The reputation he'd worked so hard to build was destroyed. In those wealthy circles, word spreads fast. The man who starved his wife at a dinner party, the man who didn't know his mother-in-law was one of the richest women in the country, he became a cautionary tale. Last I heard, he'd moved to another state, trying to start over. As for me, I'm still a school counselor. I love my job, love helping kids navigate their problems, love making a difference. But now I also work with my mother, learning the family business. She's teaching me everything, preparing me to take over one day. We're closer than we've ever been. She apologized for not telling me sooner about the money, but I understand why she didn't. She wanted me to know my own worth, independent of wealth. I've started therapy. I'm working through the damage that marriage did to my self-esteem. Some days are harder than others, but I wake up in the morning and I don't feel that weight on my chest anymore. I don't feel like I have to be smaller, quieter, less than. I take up space now. I speak up. I know what I deserve, and I'll never, ever settle for less than that again. That was 2 years ago. Today, I'm stronger, happier, and surrounded by people who actually love me. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more real stories about standing up for yourself. And remember, your worth is not determined by how someone treats you. It's determined by how you refuse to accept anything less than respect. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my situation. I read every single one. Until next time, know your value and never settle.